Hello and well met. I'm Bionic Door, and you're watching Hearthstone Classes Revisited. Today's video will be picking up our blade and starting our crusade against the other heroes as we seek to revisit the Paladin class. It's been a minute or two, or 3 months, since we did one of these, but I'm back and reporting for duty, so let's jump right into the revisit. The Paladin class in Hearthstone is meant to represent a holy warrior who calls upon their divine magic to assist them, but also isn't afraid to get their own hands dirty in the battlefield themselves. These two ideas can be seen with the Paladin's use of holy spells and summoning of recruits to fight directly on the battlefield as well. So with these core concepts in mind, these are the two goals I have for this Paladin revisit. 1, I want to take the core gameplay of the class and add to it, making some new ways to interact with both sides of the Paladin theme. And 2, I want to show an idea of something new that can be added to the class, to expand it further and add more potential for Paladin card design. Let's now take a look at the first of these ideas, which is a new class-specific keyword for Paladin. One of the main things I want to push for this version of the Paladin class is the relationship the class has between its minions and its spells. And one of the best ways I thought to do that was by expanding the Paladin's pre-existing blessing mechanic. Now, in case you didn't know, one of Paladin's official class mechanics is their blessing spells. These are spells that, you guessed it, bless a minion with some sort of effect, usually increasing its stats or giving it some sort of keyword. I'd argue that even though this is a core class mechanic, it doesn't get explored as much as I think it could, and so to encourage it, I came up with a brand new class-specific keyword, Bless. The Bless keyword works like this. Minions with this keyword have an effect that triggers each time you cast a spell on a minion. Keep in mind that the effect only triggers after you target the minion with a spell, meaning it does not trigger when your opponent targets it, or if it's randomly targeted with a spell. The idea here is to add an additional way to potentially use those blessing spells I mentioned, making each one even more valuable. I'd also imagine there could be more blessing spells added to the Paladin class to add more options for these spells that you can cast on your minions. One example of these is the spell First Blessing, which is a 1-mana spell that gives a minion +1/+1 and adds a second blessing to your hand, which does the same thing. Here's one last example of a card with the Bless keyword. The legendary Paladin Cariel returns, and now she has the Bless effect of discovering a spell that costs 1 or more, allowing her to potentially chain multiple blessing effects. Alright, next mechanic. I want to have a relook at the Silver Hand Recruit mechanic Paladin has. All throughout Hearthstone's history, Paladin has had many different Silver Hand Recruit archetypes, but most of them tend to struggle to find competitive play. I think a part of that has to do with the main way of getting recruits, that being the Paladin hero power. The Paladin hero power is often regarded as one of the weaker hero powers in Hearthstone, as unlike most of the other class hero powers, it has no immediate effect on the game. So I'd like to pitch 2 potential options to buff the Paladin hero power that could not only help it keep up with the other hero powers in the game, but also potentially help out the Silver Hand Recruit archetype itself. Let's start out with the tamer of the 2 buff. What if we made the Paladin hero power 1 mana, but instead it adds the Silver Hand Recruit to your hand? This change allows Paladins to more efficiently use their mana each turn, and opens up the ability to push a more hand buff oriented version of the Silver Hand Recruit archetype. Now, I quite like this option as it's simple and doesn't really change the balance of the hero power, but it also adds reasoning to them being called Silver Hand Recruits. Another option is to simply make the hero power 1 mana. Paying 2 mana for a simple 1/1 in Hearthstone has always felt incredibly weak to me, and personally I think straight up dealing 1 damage with your hero power is a bit better than summoning a 1/1 onto the board. This option provides a very good improvement to the Silver Hand archetype and helps Paladins more consistently have a minion on the board for their blessing spells. There are also some downsides to this approach as well, don't get me wrong, mainly that the hero power becomes a lot harder to design around. You'd have to design your Silver Hand support very carefully now, as Paladins have very consistent access to early game recruits. Those are my ideas for potential changes to the Paladin hero power. I'm very curious to hear what you have to think. While many classes in Hearthstone have a mechanic that is pushed in many of their archetypes, such as totems for shaman, Enrage for Warrior, or Secrets for some of the other classes, Paladin is now lacking in that space, with Secrets seemingly being removed from their toolkit. So what if we gave them a new mechanic that could be explored in some of their archetypes and that was exclusive to their class? Introducing the return of the Librams. A popular mechanic introduced in Ashes of Outland, Librams to me have always felt very on theme with Paladin, and I feel they act as the ultimate example of how minions and spells work together in the class. Now, I for one was not actually a huge fan of how Librams played back in Ashes of Outland, but I do not think that they are an overall bad mechanic. To show what I mean, here is my take on a new version of the Libram Paladin archetype. For starters, we can bring back some of the old support cards like maybe Aldor Attendant, but for the rest we can make all new cards that push a completely different style of Paladin deck. One mechanic I quite like from the cards I made here are these cards that have an effect that is active if you played a Libram the turn that you play them. As since you are reducing the cost of your Librams, they can become a little bit less taxing to activate later on in the game. And if you like what I presented here, you can help out the channel a lot by liking the video and subscribing. But with all that said, we have now finished our Paladin rework, meaning we only have 3 classes left to cover: Druid, Priest, and Demon Hunter. So please let me know which of these classes you'd like to see next. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again very soon.